Why don't the religious understand what evidence is? Because they just don't care, and that's kind of the problem. They have a goal in mind, and they'll do anything, including outright lying, to get there because it's emotionally comforting. So let's see them do some more of that, shall we? I honestly thought I could get this done in 2 videos, but geez, this thing is long. Therefore, we're going to have to stretch it out to 3. I honestly thought I cut the whole article in half the first time, but I guess I was a little early, and sadly there was a lot of dumb to handle. I know that some people will really like that. I'm doing a lot more really long-form content of late. Plus, with all the supercuts and all, yeah, it is what it is. We're going to start getting through the last part of this article over on Christ in Scripture and see why none of the things claimed as evidence are actually evidence, and why it's just what Christians want to be true. Because what else is new? The universe also contains chaos, disorder, and randomness. On an atomic level, chemical reactions are chaotic, as are the transfer of heat energy and gas and water pressure. The position of electrons in the energy shells of each atom is also chaotic. Randomness also occurs in geological events, chemical reactions, and biological processes. But without randomness, the cosmos would be unintelligible. There would be no effect of one media upon another or transfer of energy without cause and effect. Combinations of order and randomness make the universe what it is, with diversity, cause and effect, interaction, and beauty. The problem here is that they just don't understand chaos. The most ordered thermodynamic system ever was at the moment of the Big Bang, long before there was even matter. That's what order looks like. Complete uniformity. If you want to see utter chaos, look around. You just have to look at what's going on today. That's the problem. What the religious claim that order is in fact chaos. And what they think chaos is in fact order. Chemical reactions are not chaotic. They are entirely predictable. The position of electrons is also entirely predictable, given their positions at any other time and an understanding of physics. So long as we have a sufficient understanding of the situation, we can tell you precisely where they ought to be. Now, we might have a problem verifying that sometimes because the very act of verification changes the status quo, but these things are very predictable. They are very mathematically predictable. I really have no clue what whoever wrote this thing is on about. Complexity and order within the universe present very compelling evidences, there's that word again, for God's existence. If we can point out uniformity, complexity, and order in the universe, then we will have to consider the strong evidence for an intelligence behind it, regardless of how much disorder surrounds it. The problem is it does absolutely nothing of the sort. What they're doing here is, as I always describe it, well, I don't get it, therefore God. It provides absolutely no evidence for God because it doesn't point to any gods. That's just something that they're making up in their heads because they really, really like the idea. Now, we've already pointed out that everything they've said in the past couple of sections, and that goes back to last week as well, but it's all factually incorrect. This is just what they want to believe. But that isn't justified by actual evidence or logical reasoning. Just because you really want to believe it, that does not make it true. Consider when archaeologists discover writings on a tablet buried deep in the earth. The markings show complex patterns, with many being uniformly repeated and all of them arranged in a linear order. The letters demonstrate a written language, especially since they appear on the surface of a fired clay tablet. the surrounding material that it was found in might be a totally random mixture of sand, clay, gravel, and debris. The researchers may not know the meaning of the letters, but that one tablet is compelling evidence that intelligent beings lived there in the past. Yes, when an archaeologist discovers something that was written by a human, it can be identified as being written by a human. However, we find all kinds of things that look just like regular patterns that simply are not. People look at it and say, well, that couldn't have come about naturally. Yet it did. It's probably where some of the earliest religious thinking came from. Well, it had to be a god. No, it's just nature doing what nature does. No gods required. In the same way, just one significant example of uniformity, complexity, or order in the universe demands an explanation as to how it happened to exist in a world otherwise filled with disorder. But as we know, all three are present in every corner of the cosmos, not just in isolated examples. Without God, we would have to believe that pure chaos produced order and complexity, which is illogical. And there we see the desire to know without the ability to know. There are lots of things out there that we just don't know. We might never know. If we knew everything, we wouldn't need science, would we? Yet a lot of people just wish that they knew because they wish that they knew, where they don't actually know anything. They just invent answers to fill the void of ignorance in their heads. And where they don't know, as we just saw there, they just invent gods. Well, I don't know. God did it. Why God? Why not? And I'm sorry, but that's just reality. It's why people come up with gods, at least some part of the reason, because they couldn't answer why when they really wanted answers. Just because you want it, that doesn't mean you get it. Please try to grow up. Biological life is extremely complex. The complexity of even the simplest form of life point to an intelligent designer. DNA occurs in every cell of every biological organism and contains incredibly complex and voluminous specifications as to how the organism will develop and function. It's difficult to imagine how this complex information could develop from raw lifeless materials without direction from a transcendent designer. Although the beginning of life on Earth is a hotly debated topic, all researchers agree that the odds of any chemical reaction resulting in reproducible life by pure chance is extremely small. Except that's not true. The only people who are saying, well, it can't happen without God, are the fundamentalist evangelical creationist morons. It's the people like you who disagree. Science certainly doesn't. Science says, yep, that's how it happened. It's very easy to understand. We're working on it. That's the way it goes. That's not what creationists are doing, because they just don't want to understand. The whole process is not as complex as you think. I mean, yes, it is complex, but a lot of it is in the interpretation, not in the reality. Mostly, it's just chemistry doing what chemistry does. The religious want to know why it's doing it, because that's what chemistry does. That's the reason. There is no larger reason behind it. It just is. There is no purpose. It just is. But they don't like that. They want some larger meaning. Well, too bad. This is where I stop caring what people want and start pointing out what's really going on. And people, like the religious, although it certainly isn't limited to them, they just don't like it. They throw a temper tantrum because the reality of it isn't comforting. Well, who the hell cares about your comfort? Certainly not reality. And that's why they turn to religion and all the other woo-woo beliefs. Because to them, fee-fees are all that matters. And they're wrong. Truth is all that matters. Fee-fees are entirely irrelevant. How dumb are these people? A watch is very complex and therefore must have an intelligent designer. However, complexity is only one aspect of a watch that demonstrates intelligent design. The parts are also arranged in an orderly fashion, which work together to give the watch a function. such as telling time. Someone who has never seen a watch would still have to acknowledge that it had an intelligent designer and maker, even if it wasn't working. The fact that it has the function of telling time points to the intent of a designer. That requires an intelligent origin regardless of how it was created. Oh good, the completely debunked watchmaker argument. This ought to be fun. One issue with what he said is that if you don't have a concept of telling time, then just looking at a broken watch isn't going to tell you anything about what that function might be. Somebody living on a deserted island someplace who has never dealt with the concept of time, who just watches the sun go by, they are not going to have any concept of what this watch is supposed to do. They're going to look at it and say, well, a god made it, because they can't fathom how it might have actually been made. And this is ignorance over intelligence, which kind of describes the religious if you think about it. The problem here is watches are not biological. They don't evolve on their own. They don't change on their own. Life forms are, and they do. The whole problem with drawing analogies between the two is that the religious aren't cognizant of the inherent differences in the two items. This is another case of, well, I don't get it, therefore God. Often because the religious desperately want to feel special. It's a case of, well, I don't like it, therefore God. Because this kind of crap happens all the time. What you like doesn't actually mean anything. This is why what you want to be true doesn't mean anything when you're trying to determine what is actually true. It's why all of this made-up God crap exists. It's an excuse that provides comfort to people who clearly aren't that bright, who just wish that they had knowledge that they clearly do not have because they'd rather be happy than right. And how dumb is that? The complexity of biological organisms alone is compelling evidence for the existence of God, but we observe not only complexity, but order and function within biological life. The functions within organisms to sustain, maintain, and reproduce life provide even more compelling evidence for an intelligent origin. Order within the plant and animal kingdoms is also observed with the interdependence of species within ecosystems and their ability to adapt to established seasons. It is absolutely nothing at all of the sort. God is not just the answer to all questions just because you want it to be. It's the very basis of, I don't get it, therefore God. But that's not how reality works. You don't just get to staple God done it on absolutely anything that you can't understand or don't want to be true. A thing is true if and only if it is actually true. And the only way to determine if it is actually true is to find evidence that supports it. It's why the religious are so laughably wrong all the time. Because they just don't care. The universe would be very monolithic and stark if only order existed. Conversely, total randomness would be chaotic and incoherent, but randomness, in combination with order, gives rise to beauty. When we say that something is beautiful, we mean that it is beautiful to us humans. And how the hell do you know any of that? It's just something that you've made up in your head because you desperately want to get to a nonsensical supernatural explanation. The thing is, beautiful is entirely subjective. What I find beautiful, someone on the other side of the planet might find very, very ugly, and vice versa. And I've gone through standards of beauty before, and it's probably not worth doing again. Beauty, as they say, is in the eye of the beholder, because beauty is mostly culturally derived. Some of it is biological, but mostly it's because the culture in which you live says that it is. Of course, people like the author have probably never lived anywhere else. They don't know that everyone on the planet isn't just like they are, which explains all of the absurdly ignorant proclamations that we get from the religious. They just don't know nothing. And that's kind of sad, huh? Calling something beautiful is recognizing a greater quality or deeper meaning present than just the physical elements themselves. In a sense, it's an elemental form of worship. It's not just the physical that's being praised, but something behind it that makes an otherwise physical scene beautiful. The existence of beauty points to a creator who is the one behind it and allows us to see and appreciate it. No, it is absolutely nothing of the sort. It is just expressing a preference. There are all kinds of men out there who, at least in my opinion, they're married to some really ugly women. And as I said, that's just my opinion, just to prove a point. If you went and asked those men what they thought of their wives, they would likely say they found them beautiful. Of course, the opposite is also true. Tons of really ugly men out there as well. But I'm just trying to make a point. You don't just get to take your cultural biases and impose them on others. Then again, as we well know, the religious, and indeed most people, are convinced that everybody is just like they are. They are convinced that everybody thinks the things that they do, believes the things that they do, sees things in the same way that they do, and they're just wrong. The source or creator of something must be greater than the thing that is created. If there is a creator, then his existence must be on a higher level than any component of the created world. It follows that the creator must be greater than the greatest created things. But that's just an assertion. It is not demonstrably true. Of course, that's why this article isn't being written for the non-religious, because nothing the article writer has to say is remotely defensible, justifiable, or verifiably true. They just really want to believe it. But wanting to believe doesn't mean anything. Wanting to believe is a complete waste of time. And I'm starting to think that this entire article has been a complete waste of everyone's time. Just saying that a thing is true, that doesn't make it true. But that's how the religious think, isn't it? A personal being, one having personhood, is the highest level of existence we can see in the universe. A personal being possesses self-consciousness, intelligence, volition, emotion, and the capacity to communicate. If such a being has a body, the body is just the physical vehicle through which the person exists. Consciousness and personhood cannot come directly from inanimate object. It's against logic and the principle of cause and effect that such a being can be produced spontaneously. In other words, only a personal creator can create another personal being. Without God, we would have to believe that unconscious matter produced conscious rational beings. No, none of that is true. This is, again, just a personal assessment. It's what the author wants to believe. But that doesn't mean anything. Well, I really like the idea of a super-duper being. Okay, so what? Your opinions are not important. You don't get to just dictate reality on the basis of your ego. But I really want it to be true. So what? That's just stupid. And I say that having just encountered a theist who claimed that everything in the New Testament was true because it says so in Wikipedia. When it was pointed out that Wikipedia says absolutely nothing of the sort, he just says, well, it's true anyway, and runs away. It's really hard to know if these people are serious or if they're trolls or pose. There's really no way to tell the difference. And that's kind of scary, right? Since humans have personhood, then their creator must also have it. So God, by definition, must be a personal being and not just an impersonal force. But there is no creator apparent. I know I'm just saying the same thing over and over and over again, but they can't just get away with making these absurd proclamations without any kind of corroboratory evidence. But I just want it to be true. I don't care. Fuck off! Nobody gives a damn about your wishful thinking. We care what you can prove, and these people can't prove a damn thing. It's like, what the hell is wrong with these people? Absolutely everything that the writer of this, we still don't know who that is, but everything they have said has just been, I don't get it, therefore God. Everything has just been, well, I'm just going to attach God to it because I wanna. But that doesn't mean anything. That is really stupid, childish, and immature. But that's religion. I don't know how many times we have to see this before we stop giving these people any latitude. A basic belief in the Christian faith is that Christians were created in God's image. This means that humans possess basic personal characteristics of the Creator: intelligence, communication, volition, awareness of right and wrong, emotion, and creativity. Since we observe these qualities in all humans, if there is a Creator, He must also have them, but to a much greater degree. Yes, I know that's your belief. I just don't care. That doesn't make your belief true. It is almost impossible to get a theist to consider that as valid. They just want to believe. Yet wanting to believe doesn't mean anything, does it? Hindus want to believe, but Christians think they're wrong. By the same token, Hindus think Christians are wrong. Both of them can't be right, but all religions can be wrong. Why can't I find any theists of any kind who are willing to admit that? It's from that you find a desire for actual truth. And that's the one thing that I find that is lacking in all theists everywhere. The desire for truth absent their feelings. The desire to know what is actually going on, at least as much as we can know, without caring about your fee-fees. That's the problem that the religious have. I know I keep saying this, but what the fuck is wrong with these idiots? So, anyway, that's where we're going to stop for the week. It's a little shorter than the last one, but imagine 2 of these put together, and you'll know why I made the cut to 3. It would have been well over an hour with all the videos put together, but we'll see how the supercut turns out when that gets done. Anyway, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments. I think this really illustrates why the religious have so many problems, based on their entirely unrealistic view of the world. They also don't know what the hell evidence is. It's why I try really hard to get them to define their terms in a way that we can both agree on, and then I hold them accountable for sticking to it. Otherwise, they are way too prone to just playing musical definitions, and that just gets them into trouble, whether they're willing to accept that or not. Next week, we're going to wrap this up, and I don't think it's going to impress anybody. I haven't seen it yet, but I don't think so. Anyone except the religiously gullible, they're going to think it's stupid. The religiously gullible, they've got nothing but trouble, but they also just don't care, do they? And as we all know, that's just sad, isn't it?